Ilex cornuta carissa, carissa holly. Ilex cornuta carissa. Now, this is a shrub form holly, only going to be about 3, maybe 4 feet tall, but one of the key ID features of being a shrub is how really dense and compact this holly is, okay? Now, come on in. I think there are a couple of key features that are going to make carissa holly hopefully easy to identify. First, remember it's a shrub, so it's very compact. We know that our hollies have alternate simple leaves and they're evergreen, very thick, okay? There are 2 distinct leaf forms on carissa holly. The first, illustrated here, are these long leaves, about 3 inches long, and look at that long projected acuminate spine, that long spine, okay? Secondly, if we can see that, however you need to angle the camera, it's got a yellow margin around the leaf. It's the only holly that has these yellow glowing margin around the leaf, and it's got this very long prolonged tip. Now, the other type of leaf form that you'll find on the same plant are leaves that are more rounded, okay? So it's very common to have both rounded and those really sharp pointed leaves for Ilex cornuta carissa, carissa holly. Key ID feature, yellow glowing margin around the leaf, 2 leaf forms. Ilex X attenuata fosteri, foster holly. Ilex X attenuata fosteri, foster holly. Now, foster holly is going to be a tree-formed holly, about 20-25 feet tall, typically very narrow, okay? So tall and narrow plant, all right? So, coming in and looking at the foliage, alternate simple evergreen, but the foliage is pretty distinct from other hollies. It's about 1.5 inches long, and if you look at the leaf is broader at the apex than at the base. So the leaves are obovate, broader across the top than the bottom. So obovate shaped leaves. And the spines that you will see on the leaves of foster holly are going to be only in the upper half of the leaf closest to the apex. So the spines on foster holly are going to be the middle part of the leaf up to the apex. In other words, the base of the leaf, where it's the narrowest, will have no spines, okay? So the placement of those spines on the top half, plus the leaf being about 1.5 inches long, plus the leaf being broadest across the top, obovate, should be keys or clues that make this holly different from all the others that we have learned, all right? Now, as you pan here to the foliage and continue to look at the leaves, you'll also notice those pearl-sized red fruit. Foster holly will have pearl-sized red fruit as its claim to fame as far as fruit. That tells you that foster holly is a female cultivar, just like Savannah holly, which was also Ilex X attenuata, okay? Long leaves, spines only at the tip, obovate, broadest above the middle, and pearl-sized red fruit. Ilex X Emily Brunner holly. Emily Brunner, Ilex X Emily Brunner. Folks, this is going to be a tree-formed holly, all right? It got a couple of unique features about it, but there's also a couple of other hollies that are similar, all right? So let's separate those. So here's a tree-formed holly. This particular one has been limbed up. Keep in mind, in a landscape, you can easily see Emily Brunner as a 15-foot tall tree that was not limbed, so the branches would come all the way to the ground, okay? As is true with all of our hollies, they're alternate, they're simple, okay? So what makes Emily Brunner distinct? Well, first of all, Emily Brunner is a female cultivar, right? Female cultivar. Unfortunately, all of the fruit have already been eaten off of this, and if you can see those leftover pedicels, those are the leftover stalks from where the fruit were. But Emily Brunner is a very abundant, heavily abundant red fruit-bearing holly, tree-formed holly. Okay, so In images, I'll show you what those red fruit look like. But how do we identify it from the foliage? Well, the leaves are going to be about 4 inches long, all right? Oval in shape. We could also say elliptical, and that's broadest in the middle, kind of tapering to both ends, but oval shaped. And notice the size of those spines, okay? If you count, all right, one of my favorite cartoons as a kid was Sesame Street, so if we're gonna count here, 1, 2, I'm gonna guess a dozen. I haven't counted yet, I'm gonna guess a dozen per side. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, bam, 12. Let's do the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Bam. A dozen spines, give or take a couple. 1 dozen, 12 spines on each side of this 4-inch oval leaf for Ilex X Emily Brunner. In comparison to that, Ilex latifolia is a leaf that can get 6 inches long and have 2 dozen serrations per side. We will look at those comparisons a bit later, but know now, 1 dozen large spines per side, 4 inches long, Ilex Emily Brunner. Berberis Giuliani, wintergreen barberry. Berberis Giuliani, wintergreen barberry. Now folks, this is going to be an evergreen shrub, an evergreen multi-stemmed woody shrub. And even though in this particular setting it's been pruned as a low hedge or a low dense shrub, these plants get 10 feet tall, big plants, okay? So do not let the form of how it's pruned influence your thinking about its overall form of what it could be, okay? So think, these could be 10 feet tall or pruned as shrubs. Now, barberries are a very interesting group, all right? And a couple of features about barberries, all right? They have spines, one of the first plants that we've learned that have sharp structures, spines. They also have their foliage clustered on dwarf shoots, all right? So we'll look at that really closely in just a second, okay? So we've got 2 or 3 key things to identify Berberis Giuliani, all right? Come on in. And I've taken a sample here. And the leaves, if you can, maybe I'll turn it over, it's better. Notice the leaves are clustered on dwarf shoots. So you'll often find 3 to 5 leaves at each cluster. Does that look okay? 3 to 5 leaves at each cluster on the stem. And folks, each leaf has super sharp, large spines covering the entire margin from apex to petiole. The leaves themselves are very sharp, all right? Evergreen, so they're very dense, very thick. And then in addition to those leaves clustered on the stem, you can hopefully see the spines. Now folks, these aren't just regular spines. This is the biggest spine of any plant we'll see this semester. Does that look clear? All right. And it's a single spine, but what it is, it's got 3 prongs to it. So this 3-pronged spine can get up to 2 inches in length, each of those prongs. All right. So imagine those sharp leaves and these super sharp 1.5 to 2 inch 3-pronged spines should make Berberis Giuliani really easy to identify, okay? Now, another feature I wanted to show you is the buds. And here we are in late winter and you're beginning to see the buds that are swelling. And this is a late winter flowering plant. So Berberis Giuliani will flower, these axillary clusters of flower buds will open to like a yellowish green color, and they actually smell rather fetid or kind of poor, bad smelling. Give it a couple more weeks later in the spring, but you see those flowering clusters. The leaves are clustered on dwarf shoots, super sharp spines on the leaves, plus you've got the actual true spines themselves, which should make some key ID features for Berberis Giuliani. Nandina domestica, heavenly bamboo. Nandina domestica, heavenly bamboo. Probably one of the most recognizable plants in the landscape that most of you have seen before. Well, let's take a look at the ID features. Nandina is going to be an evergreen shrub noted for having multi-stem cane-like growth, hence the common name bamboo, heavenly bamboo. And I'll show you this quickly. I'll pick it up and you can hopefully see all those canes, all those stems kind of like bamboo looks like. But folks, this is not a bamboo, not anywhere close to a bamboo, but it's got that form that kind of reminds people of that. So these plants will get 6-8 feet tall. They're evergreen, and they've got a couple of neat ID features other than just the multi-stem form. First, looking at the leaves, this is the first example of a plant that we've learned that has decompound leaves. Decompound leaves. So, as you know, right, to find a leaf, you look for the bud. So I could start here at the tip and go all the way back looking for a bud, and I would not find one until I got all the way back to the stem. Now I've already found a leaf, and here it is. Can you, is that
yeah.
contrast?
Yeah.
This is one leaf, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so where I'm holding it is where I cut it from the stem. So this would be a tripinnate leaf, if you wanted to use that term, but we of course use the term decompound as a leaf that's more than once compound. So these evergreen leaves decompound in nature, and I would certainly show you an entire leaf on an exam as the only decompound leaf that we've done, okay? Now, one other note about the foliage. In the winter time, the foliage of Nandina will often turn bright red purple if it's in the sun. If, however, Nandina are in the shade, like this location, during the winter time, they will stay green. So you can see them either green or purple, depending on if they're in full sun or shade. It's still the same plant, it's just the color of the leaves relative to the amount of sun that it's getting. All right, now, these plants will flower in the summertime, and they have these terminal panicles of flowers. You can't see the flowers now, they're not really significant anyway, but what you can see are one of the more aesthetic benefits of Nandina, and that of course is the fruit production. And you see on these panicles of fruit, come on in a bit more, bright red in color, and notice a lot of these have either been eaten or fallen off, but red is the color of these large clustered terminal panicles of fruit. There's a cultivar of this that's yellow, all right, and a lot of different forms of Nandina. But I hope between the cane-like growth, the decompound leaves, and these terminal panicles of bright red fruit, that Nandina domestica will be easy to identify. Mahonia ex media, leatherleaf Mahonia. Mahonia ex media, leatherleaf Mahonia. Now, Mahonias are going to be evergreen shrubs, all right? 8-10 feet tall, a lot of cultivars, other species of Mahonia, but typically 8-10 feet tall, multi-stemmed, really thick branching, really thick plants, all right? Now, Mahonias have some really cool features that we haven't seen before with any of the plants that we've learned, and I hope that'll make it pretty noticeable and recognizable for the future, all right? So the first thing I want to talk about is the foliage before we talk about the leaf, or the flowers. Now I'm going to remove a single leaf, all right? This is a leaf on Mahonia. So the leaves are compound and they're pinnately compound. But something really unique about Mahonia that no other plant has, and it's missing a couple of leaflets. But the leaflets themselves have no petioles. They have no petioles, and the term for that is sessile, S-E-S-S-I-L-E, sessile leaves. In this case, sessile leaflets. So a compound leaf, sessile leaflets, and folks, these leaflets are super, super sharp, very, very thick, but they're covered in these massive spines that can be 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch long. All right, so the leaves are very, very dangerous, which is what makes Mahonia ex media a great barrier plant, all right, because of those super sharp, super large leaves, all right, very unique. Secondly, taking a look at the flowers, this plant flowers in the winter, some as early as December, but this one is carrying on into March. The terminal racemes of flowers. The flowers are yellow in color, and when these flowers fade away or pollinated, the resulting fruit look like grapes. They're purple fruit, purple berry-like fruit, and they cluster and hang down in those terminal panicles at the end of those tall stems. So, Mahonia ex media, compound leaves, sessile leaflets, super sharp spiny leaflets, and terminal yellow flowers in the wintertime, followed by purple fruit in the spring and summer. Buxus microphylla, variety Japonica, Japanese boxwood. Buxus microphylla, variety Japonica, Japanese boxwood. Buxus is a very large genus and one of the most important as far as horticultural shrubs that you'll find, all right? Lots of cool history and importance of Buxus, the boxwoods. This particular species is going to be a large shrub, 10, 12 feet, maybe by 8 or 10, 12 feet in width, all right, when mature, so very, very large. This particular specimen has been sheared and pruned and kept into this low hedge, but that's kind of how boxwoods most often are treated. So how are we going to identify boxwoods, the first species of this genus that we've learned? Well, coming in, the leaves are going to be opposite, all right? The leaves are going to be opposite. Hopefully you can see that right there. How's that? Opposite, simple leaves. One of the neat things about these leaves is they will often be emarginate, so a little notch in the tip. And I'll have to show you some photographs that are a bit more clarifying and that you may not be able to see with this particular sample. But the leaves opposite, simple, only about 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch in length. Possible emarginate or notch tips at the tooth. One of the other neat features about boxwood, and I have already removed the leaves, the stems are square. Square stems with boxwoods. All right, square stem with boxwoods. Now, what you're likely seeing is that the leaves are decurrent. So the leaf base is extending down the stem, which gives these edges on the stem, giving it a square appearance. Buxus macrophylla, variety Japonica, opposite leaves, simple, retuse tip, square stems. Now, I want to flip it over because one of the other neat things about boxwoods, oh, look at that. This white midvein on the back of the leaf. This white midvein. No other part of the leaf is white except just the midvein, white on the back side. That is a key feature that no other plant, no other angiosperm will have, that white strip. And then lastly, if you can see, all right, these bubbles. See those bubbles on the back of the leaf? Those bubbles are a result of leaf miners. And leaf miner is an insect that lays its egg in the leaf, and the little larvae eats between the leaf, and it causes these blisters. I have another sample here that may illustrate it a bit closer. You can see the blisters on the back side of Buxus microphylla, variety Japonica. Those would be the leaf miners. So a lot of cool features. Opposite leaves, square stems, white midvein, retuse or emarginated tip, and then you likely could see blisters on the back from the leaf miner. Daphnophyllum, Macropodum. Common name, Daphnophyllum. Daphnophyllum, Macropodum, Daphnophyllum. Folks, this is going to be a large evergreen shrub. In some situations, when they're old enough and maybe limbed up, they could be classified as small trees. I'm not worried about whether they're large shrubs or small trees. Just know they can easily get 10, 12, 15 feet tall, all right? So from that perspective, one of the things I want you to first notice about Daphnophyllum is they have a rounded oval canopy shape. The overall plant is really nice, round or globe shaped. So one of the neat features about this plant is its overall form being very rounded, okay? The other thing I want you to notice before we talk about the specific leaf characteristics is notice that the leaves tend to be clustered only at the very tips of the branches. You do not see much foliage on the inside of the canopy. That too is a very common expected trait or vegetative characteristic of Daphnophyllum, okay? So if you come on in a bit closer, I'm going to sacrifice this for the sake of science. All right, here again, notice how the leaves are clustered at the tips of these branches. All right, now the leaves are going to be clustered at the tips, so it's difficult to see, but they're alternate in arrangement, and each individual leaf is going to be simple and about 8 inches long, 8, maybe 10 inches long. Simple leaves. 8 to 10 inches long. And if you can see in the camera, see, I hold that still. Another really cool feature about Daphnophyllum is the waviness of the leaves, all right? There's a term that means wavy, and it's called undulate, U-N-D-U-L-A-T-E, undulate. So the leaves of Daphnophyllum, Macropodum, are wavy, undulating, all right? So 8-inch, simple leaves, evergreen, wavy leaves. The other neat thing about the vegetative characteristics is they will, in the wintertime, they will get really nice red petioles. Notice those really nice red burgundy petioles, and that of course is going to be a key ID feature in the winter and early spring months. And you can see the very large red scaled bud, terminal bud, and that of course is what will expand and elongate this spring to grow new leaves, okay? Now, Daphnophyllum is a dioecious genus, so there's male and female plants. If this were a female, which it's not, you would often see purple fruit inside the canopy, so they're not really easy to see. But in the lecture, I will show you photographs of what the fruit of the female Daphnophyllum Macropodum look like. But for now, rounded canopy, leaves clustered at the tip, leaves clustered very closely at the end of the branches, 8 inches and undulating. Hellebores, Linton rose. All right, come on in. You got Hellebore, Hellebores is the genus, Linton rose is the common name. Now, this is one of the plants we're going to learn this semester that I only would ask that you know the genus. Right? There are many species of Hellebores, but I only think right now it's important to recognize the genus Hellebores as opposed to going into specific species. Okay? So these are evergreen perennials, but they're not herbaceous perennials in that they do not die to the ground in the fall, okay? So they are evergreen through the winter, and they're prized or noted for being winter flowering plants, all right, in the shade. We'll talk more about that later, but shade perennials that flower in the wintertime, okay? So first, let's take a look at the foliage. I'm going to just cut one of the leaves off. And this plant would be considered acaulescent, in that it does not have a stem above the ground from which the leaves and the flowers appear or are born, all right? Instead, the leaves come right out of the ground, so the height of the plant is going to be the height of the stems, or of the leaves themselves, okay? So taking a look, the leaves are compound, and they're very coriaceous. They're very leathery and very, very sharp. So you can see these very unique compound leaves with all of the different leaflets to them, and then large serrations. And it's not uncommon in the late winter for the leaves to look really tattered and trashy like this. The leaves are old, all right, so it's good to kind of prune them back later. But this is what the leaf will look like of Hellebores. And then the flowers, the inflorescences, are born on separate stalks, okay? So I'm gonna come in here and I'm going to just sacrifice one just for the point of science, all right? So this would be the actual flowering branch, the inflorescence of Hellebores. And you notice these flowers, the flowers are pendulous. They're hanging down, and there are a lot of different colors to the flowers of Hellebores, but they're pendulous, okay? So if we take a look and come in, I'm gonna take one of these flowers off, all right? And hone in. Becky, does that look good? All right, now, right, oh, yeah, right there. So I want you to first, if you can see in the center are the pistils, and then you've got the stamens, the white structure of the stamens. And then, folks, look right there. You see these little green leaf-like structures? Those are the actual petals. And if you remember from floral morphology, what are the structures that are beneath the petals? The sepals. So, folks, with Hellebores, the color comes from the sepals. The petals are tiny, tiny, tiny. Then you have the stamens and the pistil in the center. So these pendulous flowers or pigment sections are sepals, not petals, all right? Now hold right there, Becky. I want to pull another flower. And this is what it looks like when the sex parts have fallen off, all right? After pollination, then the stamens fall away, the petals fall away, and you're left with the developing fruit right there in the center, and the sepals on the outside are remaining. So that's a couple of unique things about Hellebores. Herbaceous, pendulous flowers, and the pigmented sections are sepals, and then the leaves are separate, very coriaceous, evergreen, very sharp, Hellebores, Linton rose. Photinia Serratafolia, Chinese Photinia. Photinia Serratafolia, Chinese Photinia. Now, Photinias, these are going to be trees, evergreen trees in the landscape, and there are several species. The most notable, the most popular would be Fraser's Photinia, which is a hybrid from, this is one of its parents, okay? We'll show you Fraser Photinia later, but this is one of the parents, Photinia Serratafolia. Now, first thing, tree form. So we're looking at 20, 25 feet most commonly, maybe a bit more than that. But I want to focus in on the foliage and the buds as a key way of identifying Photinia, okay? So coming on in, the leaves of Photinia are going to be alternate. They're going to be simple. Let me turn it over so you can see what I'm showing you. Alternate leaves, all right? They're simple. They will range in length from about 4 up to about 6 inches in length. And there's one of those leaves. Now, also notice the waviness of the leaves. Photinia Serratafolia can have these undulating leaves. Undulate meaning wavy. Now, the margin of Photinia is also very serrated, all right? Very serrated, lots of serrations on the margin. That separates it from other plants that may not have serrations, okay? So be sure to write that down with Photinia. 4 to 6, 8-inch long leaves, undulate, wavy margins, serrated edges, serrated margins, okay? Now, taking a look at the bud. Now, of all the Photinias, and actually most of the evergreen plants, trees, or shrubs that we'll learn, this has one of the largest terminal buds. And here we are early March, and this terminal bud is already about 1.5 inches long, and it's already starting to sprout, okay? And then from a sunnier spot on the tree, I found this, and that's what it will continue to unfold and look like, almost like a head of broccoli, all right? And this inflorescence will continue to expand until it's maybe 6 or 8 inches in diameter, and then from that, there will be red fruit in the fall, clustering and hanging at the terminal ends of the branches. But for now, what I want you to know to remember Photinia Serratafolia are those 6 to 8 inch long leaves, their wavy margins, serrated margins, and those large terminal buds that are covered in red scales. Red bud scales cover those terminal buds, but keeping in mind they will continue to expand. The last thing I'll mention for now about Photinia, when this inflorescence matures and the flowers open, they're white in color and they're putrid smelling. One of the worst smelling flowering plants you'll ever smell is the flowers of Photinia, okay? Now that's when you're happy that you don't have smell-o-vision, because you really don't want to smell this. Photinia Serratafolia. Camellia Japonica, Japanese camellia, or just common camellia is fine. Camellia Japonica. Now, talk about an important genus, all right? First and foremost, I'll tell you about this later, but I gotta tell you now. If you love sweet tea or unsweet tea, if you love Bojangles sweet tea, then you have to love the genus Camellia, because tea is derived from the cousin of this ornamental camellia. That's Camellia sinensis, completely different plant, but just a little FYI. Tea is made from camellia. All right, but thinking of ornamental camellias, Camellia Japonica, all right? So many cultivars, but this is going to be a evergreen, small tree in the landscape. All right, got some neat features about it I want to show you that I think will make it easy to identify, okay? First, the foliage is going to be alternate and simple. Alternate leaves, again, it's evergreen, so they're very thick, leathery leaves. Alternate, evergreen, about 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches long. They do have serrations, okay, serrations. The leaf shape would be elliptic or oval if you wish, but elliptic, broadest in the middle, tapering to both ends. So 3 to 4 inch elliptic leaf, serrated margins. Notice this is the vegetative bud, all right? The vegetative bud is about 1/2 inch long, okay? Very different than the floral buds, and we've talked about floral buds being larger than vegetative buds, and I'll show you that in just a second, okay? Now, going to the flowers. This is a winter flowering plant. Starts in about December, goes all the way into February, and here we are in March, all right? So a broad window of time for the flowering of Camellia Japonica. And right here, Becky, if you can zoom in on that, that's what the flower bud looks like. Very, very large, and if you can compare that to the vegetative bud, you see the stark difference in the size of those buds. Vegetative is always smaller, the floral bud is going to be much larger, okay? Now, this particular cultivar is a really nice red, and it's not just red, but this one is a double flowering form. All camellias are not double flowering, but some of the double flowering forms are the more common. So in the lecture, I'll show you lots of photographs of different flower types. So do not expect them to be double, but this is a neat plant that we wanted to show you for identifying. All right, so Camellia Japonica, evergreen, alternate, simple leaves, 3 to 4 inches long, serrated with vegetative and floral buds. I'll always include the flowers as one of the key ID features on a quiz. And another reason that you really need to get Camellia Japonica right, Camellia is my mother's name. Camellia Japonica. Oh my gosh. Oh, whew, sorry, I got drunk in love here for a second. This is Edgeworthia Chrysantha, Paperbush. Edgeworthia Chrysantha, Paperbush, and I would give anything if I could pass along this smell to you right now. Folks, Edgeworthia is going to be a small deciduous shrub, this rounded canopy or the rounded habit that you see here. These plants only get about 3 to 4 feet tall, all right? Got some really notable features, all right? So I'm going to resist talking about the flowers and go through the vegetative characteristics first, okay? So, excuse me, I told you, drunk on love. First thing, if you can come in, and Becky, if you can get a shot, if you can notice how large the leaf scars are on these twigs. Does that look okay? The leaf scars, maybe this is a better example here. These leaf scars are very large, and folks, they're alternate. Leaf scars are alternate, and the size of those really large leaf scars are indicative of how large the leaves will be. The leaves on Edgeworthia, 8-10 inches long, very large leaves. So as a result, you have these raised, very obvious, very prevalent leaf scars, okay? Key ID feature, certainly in the winter time for Edgeworthia Chrysantha. The other thing I want you to notice is the suckering, all right, in the center of the plant. If you can see the number of suckers that come up, and these suckers, of course, are often removed, all right, to keep the integrity of the plant, but the natural suckering habit of this Edgeworthia is also very common, okay? Now, enough of all of those features. Let's talk about the flowers. First, what is the term to describe a plant that flowers before the leaves? Precocious. This is a precocious flowering plant, all right? The inflorescences themselves are umbels. Now it pains me to do this, but I am going to remove one to show you the inflorescence, okay? And this inflorescence is an umbel, all right? Where all of the pedicels of the flowers all arise at the top of the apex of the peduncle, so an umbel. And then the individual flowers, as I turn it over, the individual flowers are actually tubular in shape. Tubular shaped, my hands are so dry, oh my goodness. Tubular shaped flowers. And folks, yellow on the inside, but because the flowers are pendulous, kind of pointing down, you often see more white than you do the inside throat, which is yellow. The fragrance is like pure honey. It will make you melt, and it is an incredible, incredible smell. Edgeworthia Chrysantha, relatively short-lived plants in the landscape, but I would suggest planting it every time it died, because when it is nice and thriving, it is a marvelous addition to the winter landscape, and the smell of these flowers will make you fall in love all over again. Edgeworthia Chrysantha.